Hey everyone, I'm Clue, and we finally have all the information regarding Bright Lights, right? Spoiler season is done, we know all the cards, we know the rarities, we have a rough idea of pull rates, as well as what's included in the expansion slot. I think it's time for us to have a little bit of a healthy discussion. Now, I am probably going to split this into 3 parts, I think, right? So one video will be critical, one video will be the good stuff, and then the other will probably wait until I finally get my hands on the product, right? We can open it, we can experience it, and then I can do a set review like I normally do. Now, this video is going to be the critical video. We're going to talk about some stuff, and it's not all going to be positive. So if that's not your thing, that's fine, right? But I do think I have some valid points, like usual, right? And also, don't mind being wrong, right? So if you want to listen to me, just tell me I'm wrong. Go ahead. We'll have a nice, healthy discussion. All of you have always shown yourself to being great, right? I've never met a horrible person in the Flesh and Blood community. But I do think there are some things that need to be said. Now, in terms of the expansion slot, because this is the big one, right? This is sort of a running theme that LSS have sort of been doing. They will present an idea in the most favorable light, leave it for a decent while for us, the community, to speculate on, to think about, to figure out what we come to expect it to include, to encompass. And then what we actually get is somewhat of a disappointment. Now, that's not at the fault of LSS, right? Because they're presenting honest information, but they are leaving a window for the community to do its magic and to come together, to think and mull over and come up with a baseline, if you will, of what to expect. And that can lead to disappointment, right? So LSS haven't done anything wrong directly. The community hasn't done anything wrong directly, but it ends up leading to, again, a certain degree of disappointment. Now, this has been the case for a lot of features, right? So, for instance, Dusk Till Dawn, we can pull apart the COA's art cards, right? They were explained to us, right? They were this big hype thing that James White presented, and we were left to wonder what exactly we would get. So that when we actually got the cards, right, we'd built up a expectation that couldn't be met, and, you know, disappointment ensued. And I think, obviously, the easiest thing that they could have done, LSS I mean, to correct that was just like the Marvel card, right, that they spoiled at the beginning. If they just showed us one of this year's art cards, we would have been able to have a grounded expectation of what to expect, right? And it wouldn't have gone out of hand. It wouldn't have been received in the manner that it has been received. Now, the same thing has happened with the expansion slot. I think combo cards, right, combo class cards, has had that a little bit too. I think there's been lots of attempts by Legendary Studios to introduce an idea, to use hype as the main medium to build it up, and then it falls short because we are at the point where we as a community, right, we are able to just connect and build and think and develop, again, that baseline for these ideas that they present to us, that giving us this level of information is not appropriate at this point. At least to me, that is my view of the matter, and I think it would be more healthier for them and the community if we had a proper solid idea of what is coming. Now, this is the easiest way to put it to you. If I asked you, what is the next set of Flesh and Blood? Could you tell me? If I asked you what the next set of Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Chances are you probably could tell me, because a lot of those games, right? A lot of all games at this point in their development would feature a roadmap, right? Legendary Studios don't do that, right? They come up with a fun, fantastic idea, right? I really want to tell you, right? Their ideas are great. They're great for the health of the game. They have been slowly overcoming the problems that their game faces because of its design, and they've been doing so in a really great way. However, the end result and the execution of said ideas has not been the best. So yes, if I were to ask you, what is the next set? What is the next 2 sets? Are those sets going to be one-class sets? Are those sets going to have the expansion slot? Is the expansion slot going to be exactly the same? It's going to be slightly tweaked, right? There is a boundless amount of questions that I could pose to you that you will all have different answers to, right? Savage Lands is probably the prime one for the next set, but again, Savage Lands was thought to be this set, and then we got Bright Lights, and that was a curveball. And at any moment, right, Legendary Studios can just do that. They can throw us a curveball because we don't have any insight into what they're actually thinking. And to me, that is a problem at this stage of development. At the beginning, right, hype is a wonderful tool. because you want to draw people in. So there has to be that level of secrecy. But at this point, the community is developed. The community is able to hypothesize, to think, to theory craft. So keeping them in the dark just lets their minds wander. And we get to the point where basically Legend Story Studios are missing the timing, right? They're throwing out a pummel and we're just glancing over it. And that's not a good thing, in my opinion. Okay? And in case of the expansion slot, right? Just to read through this. So we get the expansion slot, a new feature starting with Bright Lights that offers a new content to a range of heroes outside those featured in the product itself. Now, straight away, this line, it sort of implies that it will be a running theme in sets, but there is no guarantee to this statement. Even the coverage of what the next sets might be by LSS, right, is very open-ended statements. And that is an issue because, again, they paint things in a great light, but at the end of the day, we can't really expect anything. Yet, at the same time, we are led to expect and therefore led to almost disappoint, depending on what actually amounts from it. The expansion slot replaces a token in 1 in 15 boosters, similar to how Cold Foils have replaced a token slot in recent Flesh and Blood boosters. The expansion slot cards are higher rarity cards that either expand the story within the wider world of Wraith, expand the tournament card pool of classes or talents outside the core focus of the product, or serve as an avenue to reprint key cards such as the Ferndale Spring Tunic, which is one of the cards possible to find in the Bright Lights expansion slot, right? This is very ambiguously worded. Now, if you don't think that is the case, just give me a second to try and reword this, right? Just using information that we, the community, already have knowledge of, right? So LSS can still keep that secret element, but we can make this whole explanation a lot more descriptive and concise. Starting off with expand the story within the wider world of Wraith. Now, for me, the issue with this line is that it is removed from this second line, right? Implying that these cards are going to be, significantly different from playable cards. And I think that is somewhat disingenuous because it, again, leaves it open to this interpretation that are we going to get something fanciful, something collectible, something, just designated for people who want to enjoy the lore, rather than what we did get, right? Which is just, again, a playable card with a little bit of lore dialogue at the bottom. So if they had just straight away come out and said, expand the story within the wider world of Wraith through playable cards similar to that of Moloch Hill, right? We have Moloch Hill from Dusk Till Dawn. We can understand that that is the representation, a fun but playable card that has that little bit of lore dialogue, right? All they need to do. And then we aren't left to, again, speculate and think, why is this being removed from this segment on just playable cards, right? And then itself, the expand the tournament card pool of classes and or talents outside the core focus of the product. I don't like the use of tournament, right? Because what that says to me is LSS are playtesting everything. They are purposefully trying to create the meta, and I don't like that, right? Again, I think the meta should be left up to the players. Playtesting is great, but it shouldn't be done to the point where they're now deciding what cards are necessary. Right, it's one thing to look at X heroes and go, well, they would run a lot better if they had these cards in their toolkit. For instance, Bolton, right, with the new support we're getting for Bolton, it's good. But if they outright come out with any cards that Lex is at the top of meta, so we want a bunch of cards that can be played against her in different classes, I think that's the issue. So I think again the phrasing is problematic to me. Maybe I'm reading into it a little too much, but I think just again, cards for classes and or talents that are outside the focus of the product would have been fine, right? Again, these don't need to be differently distinguished. You can just say cards that will feature for classes and or talents outside that featured in the product would be fine. And I don't think it needs to have, again, this ambiguous nature to it. Then we have serve as an avenue to reprint key cards, such as the Ferndale Spring Tunic, which is one of the cards possible to find in the Bright Lights expansion. Again, this is very open-ended, and depending how you read into it, right, you can read one of the cards, meaning that there's going to be more than the Ferndale Spring Tunic as a key reprint, or that it is one of the expansion slot cards, right? It is, again, so open-ended, so left for interpretation, that a lot of us, right, we're thinking we're going to see some of the cards from the first few sets. We're going to see, more than the Ferndale Spring Tunic as the reprint. But all we did get was the Ferndale Spring Tunic. I mean, we did get the Teklo Foundry Heart, but that also isn't being classified as an expansion slot card, right? It's just being a spot reprint like the Crown of Providence, or how they've previously handled reprinting legendaries, which is again just creating more confusion for no reason, right? If you're going to conceptualize this idea, make sure you yourself stick with it, right? The fact that again we have Fair Spring Tunic, which is a legendary reprint expansion slot card. Then we have the Warband and we have Shriek Razors as expansion slot legendary cards. And then we have the Foundry Heart at 012, right? And this is a legendary reprint non-expansion slot card, right? Through 3 cards, they've already just created confusion. Now, I understand that the Shriek Razor and the Warband tie into this because it does say of a higher rarity, but I think that in itself is a weird distinction. I think that personally, I would like to see the expansion slot Majestics have their own rarity, because although they're trying to balance pull rates, unless the card pools are similar, it is really impossible. So for instance, we have 46 inset Majestics versus 12 non-inset Majestics, right? So the expansion slot Majestics at a pull rate of 1 per 4 for the inset, and then 1 in 15 for the expansion slot Majestics. So if you do the math, what this means is in roughly 80 packs, right, you should find 12 expansion slot Majestics and 46 inset Majestics, right? So you should hit the right numbers to have potentially found every single card. The issue, of course, then goes into finding non-duplicates. And the rate of finding non-duplicates for 46 cards versus 12 cards is substantially different. So from box to box, again, looking for a set, trying to collect, you're going to have a significantly harder time finding the expansion slot cards than finding the inset Majestics, which can then create a misunderstanding towards their own rarity. So despite, again, them being the same odds, right, 180 packs, you're going to find 46 inset Majestics and 12 expansion slot cards, right, not necessarily Majestics. Looks good on paper, but then in actuality falls short of what it should be to be balanced and to not be a bottleneck. And while this notion of having these cards, having this pull rate, this mentality of, again, if you want a collection, if you want cards to play with, you're better off going singles market. The issue with that is Legendary Studios are now sticking the secondary card sellers with the horrible odds, right? They're saying to them, well, for you to supply your market, you now have to buy enormously more, right? Because if you want to get enough copies of all the different cards, right? If you want to be able to open everything, you have to now play the higher odds. And that is also problematic, right? Because as a store, being left up to fulfill the requirements of the singles market, right? You have to hire more manpower, so open boxes to sift through cards to find, again, unique Majestics, non-duplicates, so that then you can fulfill the requests of your patrons, right? In 180 packs, right? That is roughly 8 boxes. Did I do the math right? 10 would be 240 minus 48, a bit less. It would be 7 boxes. So in 7 boxes, you're going to, again, find that volume of Majestics, 60 Majestics, call it, right? Chances are, though, those 60 Majestics are going to have a substantial amount of duplicates, especially, again, in the expansion slot. So then you have to open even more, and even more, and even more. And we went from, again, it being disadvantageous for normal collectors to open boxes to try and flesh out their collection, to now being worse odds for the people meant to fulfill the philosophy of Legendary Studios. And I think that, again, the easiest thing to do would be to reshape the odds, make them symmetrical, do a 200 card normal set, and then have 50 cards designated to the expansion slot. Have the pull rates, again, match, and give value back to the people. To me, Dusk Till Dawn corrected the pull rates on the Legendaries, right? Legendaries felt accessible. Now we're just going to go through the whole balancing issue, the whole balancing dilemma, once again with the expansion slot Majestics. And that just doesn't seem like a logical thing to do. Because again, I'm all on board with them splitting things up, right? Making it clear to people, if you want to play the game, buy a box, play with it. If you want to collect and have cards to play competitively, go look at a single card seller, right? And support them. That is, again, a great mentality to have as a TCG company, but this is not the way to do it. Because you're now just penalizing secondary card sellers, right? They have to open so much more product to make sure that they have access to the full range of cards. Because people are very simplistic, right? They will continue to shop at the store that meets the majority of their demands. If a store is unable to fulfill that, then they're going to move about, and you ruin this dynamic. You might as well at this point just be sending LGS's secondary card sellers full playsets of cards so that the demands of the players can be fulfilled correctly, right? Without going through this weird hurdle of, well, if I want to have all the cards available, I need to open X amount of product. And X is now greater than the previous sets. And not only that, but I don't know how the expansion slot's going to turn out, right? Because again, we have that distinction between lore cards and tournament cards. So the expectation is that lore cards will hold almost no value because they're just flavorful. They're not really going to be valued highly by the competitive scene. And then we have, again, the same segment can happen in the tournament card pool that we see across all Majestics, right? Just because LSS thinks it's playable doesn't necessarily mean it is going to be playable. So I truly hope that they have also balanced it around that. And these aren't just a Majestic expansion slot card, so they have X pull rate, and they understand that these cards, the cards that are needed, should be more accessible than the cards that are just flavorful. But I guess only time will tell, really, right? Because just at face value, again, off of everything presented, the information, all we have to go off is 1 in 15. And I think this is another sort of issue for me, is when it comes to pull rates, right? I enjoy the secrecy of the collectible. So for instance, a FaB. FaB isn't always a autoplay card. Yes, some of them are powerful, but in a lot of circumstances, they are a collector's piece. So not knowing the odds feels good. Same with Marvels. You can get them as a normal Majestic variant, so you don't need to know the pull rates of Marvels. But the expansion slot, which is primarily meant to aid the competitive scene, right? Tournament card pools, key reprints. Not knowing the actual odd breakup and just having 1 in 15, I think is a bad decision by LSS. I think, again, having the exact information. Lore cards will appear at a rate of blah, blah, blah. Tournament cards will have a rate of blah, 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 and key reprints will have a rate. Even just the clarification that they are subject to the same pull rates as normal legendaries would also be enough. And then, again, just to go back to the history product, right? The Fair Spring Tuning already devalues the history product because it's in just its regular printing. It's black border. So why would you go for a white border, right? History product one, when you can get a now black border one? And then the same goes with the Teklo Foundry Heart. So I can't fathom why they, again, still just making these weird distinctions between cards when, again, they have conceptualized a great precedent to have, yet they're just not utilizing it to its full capabilities. And altogether, again, I love the idea of the expansion slot. It is necessary for the continued life cycle of Flesh and Blood, right? Because I think that theme sets, really focused sets, is a great way forward. But the current iteration of the expansion slot is, to me, a step down from what we did see in Dusk Till Dawn. And I also hope that it's not just something that is tried and then moved on to the next thing. I know we see a new feature starting with Bright Lights, but again, this doesn't say it will be in every set. And we have had a lot of things tried and tested and then just put off to the side to try the next thing. I mean, what's going on with history products? Are we going to get any information? Is History Product 2 still a thing, despite, again, the print volumes of Monarch, Tales, Everfest all being out there, right? I'm pretty sure no one in the community thinks it's necessary. So what's the go with that? Are we ever going to see combo class cards again? Just more information, I think, at this point is really necessary. I think we're past the point where secrecy is impactful, and now to the point where secrecy is more harmful than just building up hype and creating these outlandish expectations that can never be met. I think concise information is a more positive thing, right? Even in terms of budgeting and planning things out. It is a powerful tool to be able to say to your community, in this following year, these are the sets you're going to get. This is the estimated release dates. Again, quarters, that's what the majority of companies do. And then they can plan, especially if we're going with themed sets, right? You can have people then rationalize, well, I'm not a big fan of this set, so I'll probably skip it, but then I'll buy more of this set, which I am going to be a fan of. There was definitely a time and place for using hype as your main method of driving up sales, but I don't think we need it anymore. I think, again, concise information is going to go a lot further than, again, just leaving everything open-ended, painted in the best possible light, and then letting the community go rampant, speculating, thinking, and theory crafting, and eventually getting to the point where what we end up getting is not what we really want. Or when you could have just said from the start, this is what they are, you're going to get 19 more of them, have this as your expectation.